I said it before and I'll say it again.
That scene, that last scene.
What does it mean?
I'm the dude, you know?
Get the fuck out of here. No, I cannot.
That final scene
Starts now.
Hi everyone, welcome to That Final Scene. My name is Sophie and you are most likely listening to this if you're following my Instagram page with the same name where I've been literally spoiling you for the past 4 years. I am joined by my host, a very dear old friend Simon.
Hello.
And a very dear new friend Ben. How
Hello.
are you guys doing?
Not too shabby. Yeah, not too shabby, as Simon would say.
How many drinks are we in?
Well, because we're re-recording this intro quite late into the night, I'd say when we arrived, Sophie had already had rum and coke.
One of it, yeah.
Simon was having a cider and I came with the intention of not drinking and then had a drink.
A little sipperoo.
Yeah.
Turned into a wetting the whistle.
Yeah.
Before we kick off, Simon, because you are the common thread in the group, I would love for you to give the breakdown in terms of how us three got together in my kitchen.
Cool. Well, Sophie and I used to work together back in the day. It was your first ever gig in London, or your first proper gig in London.
Yeah, it was actually.
At a startup, and we became friends. I think around that time, you probably started the Instagram account as a kind of side project, and I didn't take much notice of it. That was a stupid idea.
As Simon does.
And then obviously built up an amazing community over the last few years. Ben and I were in the pub, and Ben mentioned this account, That Final Scene, and I was like, wait a minute, this is my friend Sophie's account.
It was weird because, as you say, I mean, we were just sitting in the pub and I was kind of like, yeah, I'm looking at getting back into podcasting and stuff like that. And I follow this really interesting Instagram page. It's called like That Final Scene. I think there's some like really good ideas. And I think I'd said like, I think I'm just going to like message the Instagram page and be like, listen, I'm an audio producer. If you need help, like I'd love to help produce. And Simon's just like, but I know That Final Scene. I know Sophie. I was like, oh my God, it was so random, yeah.
Prior to that, Ben had been telling me he'd been watching the new James Bond film. What's it called?
No Time to Die.
No Time to Die. And how he'd cried at the end. And I was like, hang on a minute. Ben would be a great
Inevitably, I'll
co-host.
talk about how I cried in that and probably
Yeah.
cry again, but yeah.
So this is our first show, right? I know a lot of people have been asking for that podcast to happen since forever. So it's kind of surreal that this is happening because I've been stressing about it for a while because I'm not very confident. But right now, I would say I'm equal parts excited and equal parts terrified. But I do think I wouldn't be able... No, I don't think. I know that I wouldn't be able to do this on my own. So I'm so glad you're my co-host and you're joining me in this wild journey. Ultimately, same thing with the page. We do want to be helpful. And we know that everyone is spending a lot of unnecessary time on streaming services right now, looking for things that are really not worth your time. So we do want to make...
Shots fired, my God.
I know, but you know, like...
Coming for you, HBO Max.
I really enjoyed Point Blank last night.
Point Break.
Point Break.
You clearly
That's
didn't
what I
enjoy it
meant.
that much.
Point Break is iconic and it's not a Netflix original. So we do want to make sure we save you time and energy by giving you the recommendations that you're looking for. So this is how we're going to be usually starting our episodes every other week. We also want to make you guys feel heard. So we will have a community spotlight for you and for That Final Scene community where hopefully you will feel seen in a way. I think that's something... Seen in a way because I feel like that's lacking in movie review podcasts right now where you just have like overly technical conversations and things get, I don't know, a bit one-sided and no one hears from that movie going audience. I don't feel like there's something out there, so we would love to spotlight you. And then finally, of course, we are going to be ending episode unsurprisingly with endings about films and TV shows, aka final scenes. So we're gonna be doing a blend of older final scenes like The Godfather and the final scene of The Wire and like things like that. They're just...
Do I have to watch all of The Wire?
You have to. The anniversary
Start
in
now,
this...
Simon.
Okay. The anniversary is in December, so you have a full year. I'm giving you plenty
That's
of
a big
time.
commitment, The Wire, isn't it? Isn't there a whole Isn't it have its own language?
Okay.
The American listeners are going to be very offended that you said that song.
Yeah, but it's got a specific Baltimore thing where didn't loads of people complain that they couldn't hear the dialogue?
Is this like when people subtitle Irish voices?
Yes.
Which I find highly offensive. When I see an Irish
is.
person on television and they subtitle them.
Cool. So to kick things off, CinemaCon is the one thing that everyone is talking about right now. CinemaCon is basically the biggest convention for cinema or movie theater owners. Is that like movie theater owners?
Yeah,
That's
it's like ComicCon without the cosplay, really.
Right. But it's more of a B2B thing where it kind of speaks to exhibitors and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that in the past few years, it has turned into, to your point, a Comic-Con in a way, but for films. So I feel like we are being slapped with trailers and exclusives, back to back. So yeah, I mean, Ben, I would like to hear like what's your takeaway so far?
I mean, I'm happy that they've announced another Batman. I think that's really good news because I was in Ireland over the weekend and I was talking with people about like my top 10 films of all time, and I've put the new Batman film in there because I think it is fantastic. So I'm very happy that there's another one of those.
Nice.
I mean, every time Sony now like introduce a new Marvel movie, I genuinely just kind of have to take a second because I'm really excited about Into the Spider-Verse, which is, Simon, I don't know if it's a animated Spider-Man movie, which is the sequel, or sorry, Across the Spider-Verse and then Beyond the Spider-Verse, which is, they're doing it in 2 parts, which I think will be really good. But,
I have thoughts, go on, yeah.
What I'm more so a little bit worried about is these like strands of Spider-Man. So the rapper Bad Bunny,
right, El Muerto,
is doing El Muerto. And I just don't know. I mean, they've announced Venom 3 as well, and they just kind of... I'd like there to be a little bit more clear direction from Sony, rather than just, we're just going to keep releasing movies, you know, going to keep doing it. To have a bit more of a Marvel-style generation than flogging the Spider-Man horse, because it kind of feels like all they have at the minute.
What's been your favorite trailer so far?
Oh, that's a good question. See, a lot of the ones that I'm really looking forward to, there hasn't necessarily been trailers so far. So obviously, Across the Spider-Verse had the trailer from last year. I'm really interested in The Grey Man, the Russo brothers Netflix film, but that's just stills. Nothing really's excited me trailer-wise, as I say. It's more so been about these kind of slates that we're now getting for what's coming out in a year or 2 or 3 years' time.
So they just literally play trailers, like 2-minute trailers?
Yeah, to like a room full of people.
Back-to-back trailers?
No, so they'll do like convention, like they'll have convention halls, and you know you'll have a room full of fans, and
do people clap the trailers?
Oh yes, oh Simon, they go crazy.
100%.
And sometimes they'll bring out the cast, and people will lose their mind, like go absolutely crazy, and it's really enjoyable. It's actually really enjoyable to watch. Like it's quite funny to watch, but yeah,
it's also quite endearing in a way because it does speak to movie theater owners from around the world, and to see that kind of event having that sort of not just impact, but awareness right now, where cinemas are kind of dying. It's very sweet in a way to see that spotlight to them. I really like that.
I think it's quite nice as well, because one of my kind of pet peeves is when people kind of badmouth stuff like Comic-Con and CinemaCon and all these kind of conventions, and they go, oh man, you just go and you get all these people who are obsessed and all this stuff. It's like, well, they're not obsessed. They just like really care.
Yeah.
They really care about like source material. So when actors are like, man, I'm never going to Comic-Con again, I absolutely hated it. I'm like, but your career is based around the fact that these people aren't like, especially like comic book fans and stuff like that, or any movies that are made around other source material. It's not that, like the Lord of the Rings series that's coming out.
Yeah.
Anybody who gets annoyed about that they're not getting annoyed because you've done a bad job. It's because they care so much about Lord of the Rings and the books.
They're emotionally invested.
Yeah, they're really emotionally invested in it. And then people go, oh, well, I'm not going to these things again because these people are crazy. It's like, no, they really care. And your living is made off of that. And it's why it's really nice with these things, because you get like, you know, the music communities off at Coachella, cinema communities at CinemaCon, you know, and getting together and actually getting to celebrate cinema. And actually, that's really important after we've had 2 years of not being able to go to the movies at all.
Definitely.
What's your favourite bin? What's your favourite trailer bin?
Well,
I won't ask Simon because Simon hasn't watched any of them.
My biggest takeaway from the convention so far is that Brad Pitt will never get not hot.
Agreed.
Did you see the
bullet train trailer?
Yeah. Oh my god! Like,
yeah.
World War Z vibes. It's action packed. It looks like a lot of fun. I would say I do trust him because you rarely see him in really bad films. I feel like I know what he's doing. Like if he's, from what I've seen.
I'm trying to go through my filmography now and think of bad Brad Pitt movies.
It's hard to find one. He's been very selective
pretty
with what.
good, yeah.
He's very consistent in a way. So I do think that he's gonna deliver something really good.
This movie looks like John Wick basically crossed with like The Big Lebowski, because he has a bit of like stoner vibes about him, but he's like an international assassin who's stuck in the bullet train in Japan.
Have you seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
No.
Okay, so it's.
Oh my god!
How old is he now, though?
I know his birthday, 18th
Why?
of December, 1963. Don't ask.
Interesting. Why do you know that?
Don't ask. It's a long conversation for another episode.
I have this tattoo on my wrist. That's not my date of birth.
On my left buttock.
The other big thing that I want to talk about very quickly from CinemaCon is Warner's just did their own presentation, and I feel like I want to give everyone in the PR team a hug because I feel like they're gonna need it. We have Aquaman 2 coming out with Amber Heard, and then we have The Flash with Ezra Miller. And with both of them being in the news for different reasons, I just wouldn't want to work for Warner Brothers PR right now. So I'm just sending you guys a virtual hug if you're listening.
Yeah.
Do you think people would actually boycott her film, or do you think the publicity is going to be exceptional and they'll benefit from it?
That's a very good question. I don't think that there's going to be a massive boycott necessarily, but
People just want to go see it. I mean, it's
especially
Aquaman.
from fanboys, like they don't really care about Amber really.
Yeah.
But I do think it's gonna make the PR team's life very hard in terms of how you market the film, how you put it out there. Like, do you put your own posters? Like, does it do like a press tour? Like, what's the conversation around that? I think that's gonna be very
How
complicated.
involved in the trailers is she? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And then finally, very quickly, a quick shout out to the Crimes of the Future trailer, David Cronenberg's.
Oh yeah, the Viggo
Yeah, so
Mortensen
he
movie.
released a full trailer. I didn't get a single second from it, but that's DC
It's a Cronenberg film
for
now.
you.
What's the point?
So I'm just very excited.
What's this?
It's a movie.
No!
Oh, I liked it.
No!
Can I say something?
No!
I don't get it.
What don't you get about it?
So I would like to hear from you, Simon. What's going on in your movie and TV world at the moment?
I'm just fresh off the back of a Point Break viewing.
How does it feel?
Pretty good.
Okay.
Nice.
A bit naughty, a bit of a late night guilty pleasure viewage.
So good.
It's not guilty though.
Have you guys seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I also would say there's nothing guilty about it. It's not like Speed 2.
I mean,
there's nothing guilty.
there's a character called Johnny Utah.
Yeah, exactly.
Shots are fired again.
There's lines like
Little Hen says it's time to rock and roll.
lines like this. And really subtle music.
Oh my god.
There's also an excellent cameo from Anthony Kiedis from the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, yeah,
Anthony
of
Kiedis is in it,
course.
isn't he? He's in it at one point as one of. I think he tries to beat up Keanu Reeves.
It's essentially a bunch of reckless punks trying to push things to the edge.
Can I just give you one piece of advice? Do not watch the remake. There's like a remake from about
it's
4 or 5
awful.
years ago.
I had
It's
to work
not
on
good.
that.
It's not
so
good
bad.
at all. And
The-
it's
What's
such
it
a
called?
shame.
Is it called
It's
the
just
same
called
name?
Point Break.
It feels much more, I mean, robotic in a way. It doesn't have the soul of the
It's got too much finesse. Well, there's something cool about like the cool thing about Point Break is that it feels like a little bit rough and like
Right.
it is like back when like before the days of Triple X. I feel like Point Break is great because it's before the days of that, so it's a little bit like rough and ready. And also Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze are both amazing in it. Isn't Gary Busey in it as
Yes.
like Patrick
Yeah.
Swayze's?
Yeah.
It's one of those movies that I really like because I feel like I can just sit down and just be like, okay, I just know that for the next like 2 hours I'm
Yeah.
just gonna be able to
You can
just-
disengage your brain.
yeah, disengage and just be like blown away. Like
So I watched that, and then I watched Cape Fear. I thought I just watched
Was
half
it your
of it.
first time?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, how was that like?
I watched it because there's a UK garage track
Yeah.
that samples this
Classic.
line,
Cape Fear.
and that's what made me watch it.
I feel like it's one of the satirize is the wrong word, but it's one of the most like parodied movies in any kind of TV because there's like the whole Simpsons episode about Sideshow Bob and like even the fact that he rolls out from underneath the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rick and Morty did an episode of it where the woman is under the car and she's blatantly screaming Cape Fear, Cape Fear.
Do you feel like it has aged well?
Yeah, I think it's okay. It's obviously of its, what was it, early 90s?
Yeah, 1993 I want to say.
Yeah,
But I could
that,
be.
yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
In terms of dating, there is the scene where what's the Robert De Niro plays the disgruntled
Yeah.
criminal that's been released from prison and he's trying to get back at the lawyer that put him in jail.
Yeah.
At one point, he goes to the lawyer's daughter's school, and there's this really dark scene because she must be only like 13, and he corners her in the school's theatre, and there's this really creepy scene that goes on for ages, which has these sort of sexual overtones, and that was kind of hard to watch. But then I don't think that. I think it was presented in a way that was really dark. So I
It's not
guess-
pretending to be something else.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's dated okay.
Yeah.
I feel like there's some horror anniversaries probably coming up that we can get Simon watching.
October is coming. Well, Salem's Law, Stephen King, Salem's Law.
Oh, Salem.
It's a remake of I mean, I've read the book, and I watched the first. I want to say film. I don't know. I used to be obsessed with Stephen King, and then in the past 10 years, he's done not him specifically, but he's been an executive producer in every single film or TV show they've done on the back of his books, and I've just been majorly disappointed with 80% of what
You didn't like It parts 1 or 2?
I did like It, for example. I didn't like the second one. I didn't like Lizzie's Story, which came out as like a miniseries on Apple TV Plus. What's interesting is my favorite Stephen King book is actually Lizzie's Story. And when I saw that there was a miniseries with Julianne Moore and Clive Owen,
Love Clive Owen.
I love him.
He could have been James Bond,
I'm
man.
in love with him.
I think he was in the running for it before Daniel Craig.
The Croupier.
Really?
The Croupier is his absolute high point. Have you seen The
No,
Croupier?
Children of Men is his high point.
Oh, I've not seen that.
We're gonna have an argument. You haven't seen Children? Oh my God,
don't
Simon!
think so.
Children of Men is
Dude,
one of the best films
honestly,
ever made,
yeah,
hands down.
100%.
It's
Okay.
incredible.
It's on my list.
Have to do that for final
Yeah.
scene. That's a fantastic film.
We should do it for the anniversary of Brexit. It's very relevant. It's very relevant. Like it's coming up to June.
That and V for Vendetta.
Yeah.
Or
It's very-
1984.
What I read is that he was like, it was the very first time he was actually writing the script for the series, and I
Okay.
was so excited because you'd never seen him in a screenwriter
It's all been adaptation.
role. Yeah, and you guys, it was the dullest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, no.
And it's such an eye-opening moment for me because I was
Yeah.
like, it's so interesting how someone can be such a talented novelist and not really know how to translate his work on the
Translated
screen.
the film, yeah.
Which is why I get like, I mean, I've never written a novel in my life, so I can't even
Yeah.
imagine. But it sounds like it's a different. No, it sounds like it must be a
different
different
ballgame.
wheelhouse in a way. So that was disappointing. But yeah, Salem's Lot is coming up. I'm gonna see it anyway, and I do want to say that it actually, because of Warner's doing their recent presentation at CinemaCon, it's one of the things that they really want to push.
Yeah.
Because Warner's is really doubling down on the Halloween stuff, like with It and Conjuring. Like they're really owning that month every year.
Did they have that new Ethan Hawke one? Have you seen that one? Is it the Black Mask or something like that?
Is it the Black Phone? No,
Yeah.
I'm making
Is
it
that,
up.
is that, yeah.
It's
no.
the Black Fax Machine.
Okay, that takes out. That takes out. Imagine how. Yeah. I don't know if it's Warner's. Yeah, but it could be. It could be. Cool. So I think we can move on to the next segment of our show,
Yeah.
which is the community spotlight. When I look back at the past 4 years that this page is active and I've been running it, I don't think that we would be doing this today if it weren't for you. And I wouldn't be joined by Ben and Simon if it weren't for the participation and support and appreciation you guys have shown the page. So the people that know me and know my journey with the page know how thankful I've been and I am with what you have given me in a lot of ways in the past few years. So the other day, I asked people on the page, what is the one film that changed your life and in what way? The responses were absolutely phenomenal. Like always, these people always come back with such thoughtful, funny, introspective, and wonderful comments. So we'd love to shout out a few. But before I do that, do you, Ben and Simon, have one film that changed your life for better or for worse, and in what way?
Such a difficult question.
Yeah.
I know, I'm throwing a curveball at you.
It's easy to name films that had a big effect on you or made you feel something, but a film that changed your life is big.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying, like, as someone who's done, like, Amdram before, I'm trying to think of, like, you know, those films, because I can probably pick out some that I made, you know, like, inspired me as someone who wanted to act and do drama and kind of be a creative person. Like, I always go back to In Bruges as,
Oh, yeah.
you know, Colin Farrell's performance in that film made me go, holy shit, that's real. Like, I would really love to do something like that. And even though it's not the most celebrated film of all time, it's still like it's a low budget indie film, really, about two hitmen in Belgium, you know, and it just happens to have this incredible cast, and it's an Irish film as well, you know, always plays quite nicely for me. But just going back to starting it all for me, I have such a vivid recollection of seeing The Phantom Menace in the cinema.
Okay.
And just seeing it in this tiny little cinema screen that I don't think the cinema's even there where I went to see it in, but I just have such a clear recollection of going to that and being like, oh man, going to the movies is cool. Holy crap. And this is something I really enjoy. And it's become such a huge part of my life. Like, a big part of who I am is like referencing movies and quoting movies and all that stuff. And as I say, going into drama. So those are two that have probably not necessarily changed my life, but have definitely had an influence kind of on me and like my interests, and that and all the Bond movies. I mean.
It does sound like it got you into cinema in a way, and more
Massively so.
profoundly.
Yeah,
For me,
massively
that
so.
would be Inception.
Really?
Yeah, in terms of like
Interesting.
the film that I saw on the big screen and being like, holy fuck, they can do that?
Yeah.
Like that was a kind of like mindset shift for me, like from being someone who's watching movies to watching films. You
Yeah,
know,
I
that
get
kind
you.
of subtle
Inception is like sensory overload, isn't it? The sound
Yeah.
design is incredible. The visuals are so engulfing. It's like an assault on the senses, isn't it? In the cinema.
And
In a good way.
someone, one of the comments someone made referenced Inception, didn't
Yeah,
they? I think on the post as well. That was
Yeah.
something that someone had mentioned.
I know
It's clearly quite
they-
it's
yeah.
like from a filmmaker's point of view, it's a very and actually a lot of Nolan's work.
Yeah, we had a couple of people saying that it was a film that got them to think about filmmaking as a career. And it's interesting because ultimately Inception is about the filmmaking process, a very like meta film for
Yes.
Nolan himself.
It also explains something that's pretty complicated on paper in
Yeah.
a really simple, clever way.
Which is interesting because Christopher Nolan's tried to replicate that, and actually I feel like he hasn't hit the mark. Definitely tried to has attempted similar ideas with Interstellar, and then with Tenet. Actually, there's almost too much. Whereas other films like Dunkirk, obviously Dunkirk again is just a spectacle like of a film. It kind of strips it back and it doesn't try to be too clever. And that sounds like what Oppenheimer, his next one's going to be.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that
What
like
the,
Inception feels like his peak.
The inventor of the nuclear bomb.
Yeah,
Inventor of the A-bomb,
I do feel like, I think you're right in the sense Tenet did try to be Inception steroids in a way.
Yeah.
It feels like that. Interstellar did work for me, but I think for very different reasons. I think it was I don't know, for me, a lot of people say that Inception is his most emotional film. For me, that's Interstellar. It's just
Same.
it's connected with...
Inception is, I mean, I always go back to these films, but Inception is like science fiction Bond, but the perfect
Sure.
way to do it.
I remember seeing Inception in the cinema, and the first time that he bends the land, I found that really shocking, and the frame completely bends and twists, and your perspectives are lost. And I found that a very powerful moment. Whereas I agree, Interstellar made me cry, whereas Inception didn't. The bit in Interstellar when he's stuck behind the bookcase.
Oh,
But my hot take on it, his best film is still The
Insomnia?
Prestige.
okay, wow.
And that film gets, and you know what, I've seen
good
people give that film hate. I think The Prestige is incredible. It's such a good film, considering The Prestige.
What's it
and that-
about?
It's now, Simon, I'm going to give you a one-line synopsis that's going to make you hate this film. It's about two warring magicians. Now, I've sold that terribly, but it's actually it's brilliant. David Bowie's in it. David Bowie plays Nikola Tesla.
So good.
Yeah, it's about two magicians in the 1800s and this feud that they have, but it's fantastic. It's Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman back in the day.
Another comment on your post was for Into the Wild. And that had a massive effect on me when I first
Really?
watched it. The themes of like freedom and breaking out of what society want you to do with your life. I found that such a powerful film. I don't know if it's changed my life though, but
Yeah.
it's one of the it's up there. And the other one I was going to mention for myself was Kids,
Yeah?
the 1995 film. Because I remember one night I was at home alone. I must have been about 12 or something. My mum and dad were out. I was probably flicking around on TV like really late. And this film just started to draw me in, and it was like really had this sort of dark, exciting energy about it. And I got sucked in, and I couldn't sleep the whole night because I found the film so terrifying. And I remember that night, my neighbours were having a party, and there was a party in the film where a girl's raped. She's basically so out of it, and this guy rapes her when she's on the sofa. And I was lying in bed listening to my neighbours have this party, thinking, what's happening in that party? Is it like what's happened in Kids? And will I have to go to parties like that when I'm older? And it had this really deep effect on me.
Yeah.
You know, and I never really talked to anyone about it. I never like told my mum and dad or
Yeah.
anything, but it kind of like sat in my head for a long time. So maybe that film did change my life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
I think
thinking
it
about
did.
it, I mean, I
Yeah.
think I mean, I saw it in its play form, but I'm sure there is a film version of it. But I saw Death of a Salesman.
Oh, it's great.
So I saw that on stage in Stratford upon Avon in the Shakespeare Theatre. It was after I had like dropped out of uni and stuff like that, and it's the only time I've ever watched something and it made me go, "Holy shit, that's how I'm feeling." And so much so, I went to try and get into drama school, and that I used that monologue, and they asked me, "Why'd you pick that?" And I was like, "Because this literally this put into words how I was feeling about a year ago, and nothing's ever done that before."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, blew my mind, that play.
Yeah.
I thought it was incredible. The character in it, the eldest son, I was like, holy shit, that's me. Like, that's literally how I felt. And I'm sure there's a film version of it, so I can probably throw that in there.
It's incredible what films can do to you when it comes to identification.
Well, it can make you realize that was the thing for me where I didn't realize. I was like, holy shit, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, I hadn't thought about it, and I was like, hang on, if I think that's exactly why I feel the way I feel.
Right. Yeah.
And then after that, I was like, it was like a realization.
Did it give you
Walking
like
out-
validity in your feeling?
Dude, my mate said it was so awkward. He's like, I could hear you sobbing in the theater. I was like, shut up. It was a very emotional play.
This is a safe space, and I feel like we're gonna be having a lot of emotional.
Trust me, when we get onto the No Time to Die conversation, I will actually.
Okay.
Great. When we get onto
Let
Mrs.
me get
Doubtfire.
the napkins. Let me get the napkins.
Yeah. When Nuns on the Run is finally brought to the table.
But
Simon
actually,
will lose
that
his mind.
links into the film, which was our homework to watch later, which is essentially watching a play
Yeah.
in
12 Angry Men, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
12 Angry Men.
So,
Anyway.
shall we start with some of the community responses?
Yeah, go for it.
I am going to start with my very good friend, comedian of cinema, who said, I was at Truman Show when I was 12, and I'm convinced it jump-started my depression. The older I got, with more viewings, it's turned around completely in my mind. Favorite film of all time.
That's,
love
he's saying
Truman
that that the meaning of the film has changed as he's got older.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
And I was just going to say, that's a huge thing. Like, the from watching it at the age 12 to watching it 10 years later, you notice things completely differently.
I mean, I just need to watch it.
Have you not seen the
You
Truman
would
Show?
love the Truman
it's a
Show.
fantastic
Has that got Jim
film.
Carrey in it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
one of
Yeah, I
Jim
think
Carrey's best films.
Yeah. I am going to butcher people's names. I'm just going to read some of the comments without the names, so I'm really sorry about that.
You know who you are, though, I'm sure.
Yes. Lord of the Rings. I was depressed and self-harming and was seriously considering ending my life. And then the film showed me that life is worth living, that there's some good in this world and it's worth fighting for your friends, for yourself, and for the world. This is beautiful.
Yeah.
La La Land showed me that sometimes your heart can be broken in the most beautiful way. It's a heartbreaking ending. I have
Yeah.
it on my wall right now. It was, it got me through some rough.
Well, it's a real ending as well, isn't it?
It's
I
a
mean,
real
it doesn't try. La La Land does quite a good job in that. It doesn't try and sugarcoat it with, we're just going to have a happy ending. And
Yeah, exactly.
Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone live happily ever after. It's like,
Yeah, you can love someone
you can
and
love someone
still
and
end
sometimes it
things.
just doesn't work out.
Yeah. Arrival, that came up a few times in the comments. I'm not going to spoil the ending, but when it came out and saw the ending, I thought, what would I ever choose? Then 2 years later, I had a son. saw the movie again, and it makes the ending so much more crashing. I still think about it from time to time.
It is interesting.
That's so sweet.
That is really interesting because I think it goes back to the age, not just, you know, watching things at different ages, but watching things after like different milestones in your life, or even like watching films when you're in a relationship, or watching films when you're not in a relationship, and how kind of that resonates with you as well. Like, that's really interesting that
Definitely.
this person had a son, and then it completely changes your opinion of it.
Yeah, because you bring things back to you in a way.
Yeah, it just hits home so much harder when you can actually, you know, put yourself in that person's shoes of, I know what that feels like.
It's like over your life, you amass more empathy.
Yeah.
And you can connect with more stuff as you get older. Because I remember rewatching the 80s film Weird Science.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where there's boobs in it. But when I watched it as a kid, it never registered.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so like it just shows
Yeah.
that's like taking to what you were just saying to an extreme, where because it's not important to you at that age, it just doesn't go in. Whereas later on in life,
That's
different things become important, like
true.
boobs.
At a certain point in a boy's life,
That's
boobs
true.
become important.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, I think I've told Simon this story before, but I used to have, back in the days of like recording movies off the TV onto like VCRs, having GoldenEye on recorded off the TV, because ITV always used to show the Bond movies.
Is that the one that you taped over your mum and dad's wedding?
No, that was for, I think that was for Barney. And it was only when I bought the DVD about 10 years later, like I'd say I've been watching the Bond movie since I was about 5. So GoldenEye came out in what, 90s?
What's your favourite Bond movie?
My favourite Bond movie? Oh, that's a very different question that you'll need to give me more time on this.
We need
I
an
find that
episode- we need
question
an episode just
incredibly
for-
easy.
Yeah, we'll need. No, I don't find that question easy at all. But so I then a couple of years later I bought GoldenEye on DVD.
Yeah.
And I noticed all the scenes that my parents obviously had deemed too raunchy and had stopped the video recording and then
No way.
recorded it again. And I had this whole thing of, what? I thought the film jumped to another point at this, and then I was like, Jesus Christ, there's about 10 minutes of this
Did you
film
not
that I haven't
notice the
seen.
dodgy edits, or were they really well done
No, I
edits?
was about 6. Of course they weren't well done edits. This is like my dad pressing the stop button and then waiting until it goes through and then being like pressing record again, and it would just automatically jump into an ad break, and I'd be like, oh, okay, it must just be that the ads are now.
Oh yeah, the
And-
news or something.
Yeah, exactly. When that was not the case.
Moving on. Moon has always had a profound effect on me. It was the first film that made me realize how terrified of being alone I am. I think it's my greatest fear. With that in mind, I've seen Moon 8 times now, and it never fails to make me cry. Moon is one of my favorite sci-fi films. It's actually the debut film from Duncan Jones with
I think so, yeah, with Sam Rockwell.
He's David Bowie's son,
Ah, right.
and his debut film is just like
Yes.
literally out of this world.
He's gone on to also make Dungeons and Dragons. Is Dungeons and Dragons?
Good
Yeah.
grief.
Quite
World of
180.
Warcraft, World of
Quite
Warcraft,
in 180.
Moon's a fantastic film now.
Yeah,
And
so-
the ending of that, I mean, we can probably do a
Yeah.
final scene on
Quite
that.
elven.
No.
Okay.
The Secret Life of Walter Mitty made me realize life is too short to not make it an adventure, and it's never too late to start living. That's
I've
cute.
not seen that.
It's a very good
Is this
film.
the Ben Stiller film?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like the trailer is I don't know, it tells you a very different picture.
Okay.
So I would recommend not watching the trailer. Oh, maybe watch it afterwards, because it's a very good trailer,
Right,
but I feel
okay.
like it takes away from the actual film.
Interesting.
Life is Beautiful and the Shawshank Redemption, which came up a few times, both saved me at a point in my life by showing me as long as you breathe, you fight, and as long as you fight, you hope. And so here I am, still fighting and hoping. Really sweet.
That's really nice.
Poetic. We have poets in this.
You've got some very poetic,
Jesus.
followers, my God.
Simon's favorite, Showgirls.
So earlier on,
Sophie read out this post, which is it's Showgirls because it taught me how to teach Versace. Now, Sophie had a very big misunderstanding of what Showgirls was. Not the 90s burlesque dancer film. She thought it was Dreamgirls, the film starring Beyonce and Jennifer Hudson and Eddie Murphy.
Anywhere.
Which are two... If you go into Showgirls expecting Dreamgirls, you are in for a big shock.
Anywhere I can slot Beyonce in, I'm gonna do it. It's a Wonderful Life taught me how much beauty and gratitude I could find in the depth of my youthful dreams and aspirations. The
oh
gift.
man,
Wow.
Wait.
We can't end on this one.
I know which one we're ending with. No, but wait a second. the gifts life brought me were more fulfilling than those I yearned for.
Okay, that's
Really?
good.
Like,
That's good. Well done. Yeah.
Chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss.
And the final one, which
Okay.
I feel like we should end with this one. Ratatouille taught me that rats can really cook. We just went through a lot of heavy quotes and like messages from people, but I do
that's
feel
good.
like
That's a really nice almost justification what we were talking about earlier about, you know, cinema and people getting back to the cinema is that, you know, anybody who says that movies are just these vapid commercial things that are just massive money pits and that, you know, that's all they are, kind of shows you that, you know, there's movies on that list. Lord of the Rings has 12 Academy Awards. And it just goes back to, you know, it shows that it's different for everyone and that actually, you know, there's a...
People connect with different things.
Exactly. Depending on where you are in your life, depending on what you've experienced, you know, the person who talked about Arrival and having a kid and how that changes it. And it's just,
I love that. Cool.
I've written Arrival down on my list of things to watch.
Yes, Arrival is fantastic.
I would watch it again with you if you want to. I'm going to movie night. Cool. I am calling this a wrap.
Yeah, we'll take a break and we'll be back with the main segment for spoilers. For 12 Angry Men, the thing that we're actually here to, we're the one that we're here to actually discuss the final scene of. So
Yes.
we'll take a quick break and
The rambling will continue.
the rambling will continue.
Oh, look, a message from our sponsor.
G.I. Jane 2. Can't wait to see it.
Nah, yo, hold my poodle. Hey, yo, what's up? Y'all got a problem? Y'all want some of this?
Without much further ado,
Here we go again.
So our very first final scene is going to be for 12 Angry Men, the very first post from my Instagram page. So it only feels fitting to kick off the podcast with it. So what is 12 Angry Men about? Who wants to give the rundown?
It is a 1957
That's very specific. I love it.
release, and it's about 12 jurors deliberating over the fate of a 18-year-old boy accused of murdering his dad. And it's all set in one room. It's pretty intense.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting from like single cam kind of one shot movies
Yeah.
that this actually did it. Kind of did. I mean, there's cuts in it, but it did it in the 50s.
I think for its day, it was probably quite progressive because it covers the different viewpoints of the jurors and covers their different prejudices.
And I think the actual premise of the film, which kind of leads to the final scene, is that as they do try to reach a unanimous decision, there is one person in the room, one juror, is it juror number 8, I want to say? He does cast considerable doubt on elements of the case. And this is how the film begins. That happens in the first 15 minutes of the film, where it's like, I don't think we should make a judgment that quickly. We should interrogate what we have in front of us, which I feel like is, to your point, is very interesting. The film was directed by Sidney Lumet, who's one of my favorite directors, like Dog Day Afternoon. You have a bunch of other films that I don't want to go on a tangent about. But it's interesting because he's a director that has a very deep interest in understanding how individuals can come together to move past corruption, which I feel like that's a common theme among his filmography. Yeah. And when it comes to that film in particular, what I don't really like is that sometimes it's being passed as courtroom drama, but I do feel like it's much more complex.
And it's
than
not even
that.
it's not even in a courtroom.
It's not
is
even
it?
in the courtroom, yeah.
Which I feel like, yeah, to your point, it's not the right way to talk about it, but courtroom sells, you know, because you have that kind of, it's very dense thematically.
I found it like watching a play. Because when I first put it on, I thought, fucking hell, this is going to be hard work. Even at the beginning, the sound design, or it's not really sound design, the sound of the court is really echoey and really stressful.
You can't actually, for a good 5 or 10 minutes, you can't really hear what anyone's saying.
Yeah, it sounded like the type of film that my mum used to watch on a Sunday afternoon, like a Second World War film.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, I don't know.
Guns have never known.
Yeah. But then I realised that all of that stuff was going to be used as a device to crank up the tension later on.
Yeah.
And they play with loads of clever things like the sound It's obviously very, very hot, so all the guys start sweating.
Yeah, the room
really
is supposed
profusely.
to just be like a pressure cooker that like builds and builds and builds and builds until the end. Which, interestingly, the thing I noticed is that you can see the clear turning point in the film is when the fan gets turned on. They close the windows, they turn the light on, and then they finally switch on the fan, and everybody else starts simmering, calming down and down and down, except for number 3, who has been just building for the entire film.
That's so
funny
well
that you
done.
say it's like watching a play. So Simon knows this. I did like Amdram for years, and the first play I ever did was 12 Angry Men.
Ah.
Oh,
And I played
wow.
juror number 7, the one who's obsessed with getting off to the baseball game. And that was the first thing I ever did.
Can you
in drama.
identify with that juror?
Do you know what? Weirdly, I mean, I'm very
Get me
interested
outta
in sports.
here.
Yeah, get me out of here. I've got tickets for the game. I mean, probably sounds like something I would say, but it is definitely, there's definitely elements of, it's written almost like the dialogue, especially.
because once I started to frame it as I'm watching a play, then everything changed, and suddenly the theatre of the mind kicks in, and it's all about what they're saying and not the acting, which I found quite wooden at the beginning.
I think I said this to Simon on the way here. Like Henry Fonda, who's an amazing actor, you know, one of the best of his generation. At least for the first, much like a play, it feels like he's only getting comfortable the first 15, 20 minutes. And it's probably to do with a lot of the way they film it. A lot of it is just shots like face onto the camera.
Yeah.
And
Do you
there
think
is
they
a lot
filmed it
to-
sequentially then? Do you think they filmed it in
I mean, it
order?
would make sense. It's something like that. It makes sense to film sequentially. Obviously, you'd film it over a couple of weeks, but it makes sense that rather than like traditional filming where you're filming stuff in different slates and you have different, you know, jumping from one scene to another, something like that makes sense to do that. But it feels like, you know, he really only hits his stride. He only really hits his stride when we get to the knife. The knife comes out and he starts, you know, okay, that's when he starts going. Juror number 3, I think, and we get onto it for the final scene.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. Yeah. Like for a film
Lydia
from
Cobb,
the 50s, is incredible. Like his performance in that is so, like the one thing I wrote notes in it when I watched it, and he's so Brando-esque. Like he prowls around and he really kind of like it's a very physical performance, just in the way that he kind of towers over people, even in the way that like even has his trousers pulled up really high to kind of make him look almost taller. And he kind of towers over people, and he never breaks. Like the rest of them are wiping their brow and everything like that.
He's the one that brings a story about his son a couple of times. And that's the climax of the ending, ultimately, because the way I saw it anyway, this guy is suffering from the worst kind of sin, which is pride.
Yeah.
And it's, as you said, he's the hardest to crack because pride is so hard to get through. And ultimately he has like a full 360 in the end. That's like, the reason that I've been so stubborn is the reason that I actually do not want this kid to have a fair verdict in a way. Which I'm not saying, and that's another conversation. I'm not saying the kid was innocent, but there was so much evidence to imply that he was not guilty.
Beyond
It's that kind of
reasonable doubt.
exactly.
Yeah.
There's a kind of element. So for me, that was really, really interesting. I had seen it obviously ages ago, which is why I posted about it 4 years ago, and I only rewatched it recently because I knew we were gonna talk about it in the podcast. I did have very different experiences watching the film now and watching it 4 years ago. Because we're focusing on the final scene, ultimately, I remember 4 years ago, I came out of the film thinking, I'm not sure if the ending worked for me. The exterior courtroom scene did work, and for reasons we can talk about, but the climax of like, why did juror number 3, the guy we're talking about, break in the end, for me felt unearned. In a way, because I was like, what is he doing? Why is he saying not guilty now?
Yeah.
I felt like the payoff, which is the scene itself, like him breaking down, his breaking point, as he says so himself, wasn't able to match the effectiveness of the setup and the planting of.
Well, it feels like it's over very quickly.
And I didn't get it. Like I was like, why are you taking out picture? Like why are you taking out the picture of your kid? Like
Is that when he rips it up?
Yeah. And I don't think, looking back now on my second rewatch, I realized that it's not the fact that seeds weren't there. I feel like the planting was done well, but I feel like because we had literally 12 angry men in one room, and you have so much information from a dialogue perspective, you feel like on a first watch, you have so much information coming to you that I was like, I actually don't remember why you're angry. Which is like, Simon, like you haven't watched this film before, and you didn't even remember that this guy was actually like the last juror to turn his vote. Because
I have to say that for me, that wasn't the most impactful moment in the film. It didn't. That wasn't the climax for me at all.
Which is why I'm kind of critical about it, because it should have been, because he's the last one that kind of breaks down and ultimately gets everyone to go back home, because he's the last man standing in a way. That's like fuck it. And you have this incredible scene where he kind of breaks down. I feel like, to your point, Ben, the performance is amazing. And like that scene is so powerful. Even though I agree, Simon, it's not the most powerful scene. I feel like the old man, the racist guy, when everyone turns on him, like turn his back on him, I feel like that's incredibly powerful. Very theatrical, as you said.
That's where it goes full like thespian play almost, of like everybody just walks away. Because it's interesting, when I look at it, and you think about your own relationships with your own parents and stuff like that, and the only difference between his son and the kid on the stand is that his son ran away.
He projects his relationship with his kid onto the defendant.
But I also think that also then comes, because there's, at least at certain points in the film, there's relationships to his own father and how his father would have treated him.
Yeah.
And it's almost this
generational.
It's a vicious cycle of these things, because there's so much focus on how the kid's dad used to beat him up and all that, and coming from these rough neighborhoods, and his whole thing is, well, you treat your parents with respect. I would have done that, or I would have gotten a slap.
Violent, and his language is very violent. Like,
he's
stupid
very,
kid. Like, you wore your heart out. Like, it's just so violent.
He's so aggressive, but he's so aggressive for the whole film. I think he's calm. He's calm for about 10 minutes, and then from there. Which, interestingly, do you know what? From a performance point of view, even though it's incredible, like it's the best performance in the film, you almost wish it built a little bit more. Yeah. And especially because in the whole sense of that the room's a pressure cooker and everything that's going on, it's getting hot, it's getting sweaty.
All the men are like pressure cookers as well.
Yeah.
That have their individual moments where they go off.
Yeah. Except his is just, he is already a breaking point when he gets there. And actually, I'd love to see an actor do it as like from a play perspective, which is great because you can see these things on stage as to how people do Shakespeare now, how you interpret characters differently. I'd love to see that character with like a slower build, that it builds up and up and up, and the aggression isn't automatically there because he comes in as this quite like reserved man. He's trying to sell himself to the advertising guy. He's trying to give him his card and everything. But then automatically he just snaps.
I think perhaps it's because the script feels quite linear, and if they had teased parts of this guy's explosion earlier on and got you to buy into this and hint towards it, that would have led to a better.
Do you know what? Because I was thinking about this. What if you made 12 Angry, like if 12 Angry Men was written today, of like how would it be done in modern cinema? It'd probably be about half an hour longer. It'd probably be 2 hours. We'd have flashbacks to the jurors' lives. We'd see the time that he slapped his son, and we probably wouldn't find out if they voted him guilty or not. You'd get to the end, and it would be a thing of like they just walk out. We don't actually see what the final. We don't even see him say not guilty. We just see a breakdown, and then they leave. Yeah, and that would be it. Because in modern cinema, we don't really there's so much today that's given on like the cliffhanger, right, or like the suspenseful ending. Inception. 7 we were talking about earlier. Sure. There's so much built around suspense, and then you can make a sequel.
It's interesting because we talk about a final scene, and because it does feel like a one-take film almost, because it's a single-setting film. It's hard to say what is the final scene, and I think technically it is the exterior courtroom scene where they go out and they tell each other their names, which I think is very sweet. But leading up to that, you have the breaking point of juror number 3 that goes on a tantrum really, and then he's like, not guilty, not guilty, and then the transition is very quiet, because I feel like you know the saying, some things are better left unsaid. There's no point in even arguing. I feel like everyone in the room got where he was coming from, and all of that shame that was projected onto the table. He had a lot of shame in him.
Henry Fonda putting his coat on him, like even just the look he gives him, he's clearly like, it's just, I I pity,
Compassionate.
I pity that you have become this, that you would feel. He even says it
Yeah.
to him, how like a lot of the language between them two is, you know, how could you be this kind of person? How could you do that? And how could you feel this way? And that really strikes at the heart of what the film is trying to say is, well, in situations like this, personal prejudice has to be taken out of the room. You have to look at these things logically. And actually, the journey for every man in that room is overcoming that of what the baggage that I brought into the room and then leaving it at the door. Because it's clearly a thing of just like, there's no animosity at the end of the film.
Yeah.
Even though juror number 3 goes to hit him at one point. And then there's that brilliant scene where they're recreating the stabbing scene. And he even just, he goes, winds up
So
to go and stab, and he
tense,
just goes, nobody's getting hurt here. But there's definitely something powerful in the idea that we don't know their names, and that the only two people who we get names from at the end are the two. And actually, maybe not even powerful. You know, Sophie, you were talking about this beforehand about the idea of Henry Fonda wearing white, because in westerns, you know, in black and white, the only way you can distinguish between a good guy and a bad guy is by making them wear different colors. So bad guys always wore black, good guys always wore white. You know, this writing in thing, the fact that he's the only one who gets a name, apart from, the other guy.
He's obviously the protagonist, hero, whatever, because everyone loves a hero, everyone's a central character. My issue with the symbolism behind him wearing a white coat and the rest of the jurors wearing a black coat is it kind of indicates that we need a white knight, we need a perfect moralist, we need a saint in order to be able to get to the truth.
Yeah.
And I'm coming from the perspective where I do feel like everyone has goodness and compassion and kindness in them. And you shouldn't have to put someone on a white horse to come save the, I don't know, the evil and the I don't know, immoral people. I just felt like that was unnecessary. And there is this quote from, I Lost It at the Movies, which is one of my favorite books on cinema, which says something along the lines of theatricality doesn't always mean dramatic strength. I'm paraphrasing, but it's about what was the intention of the director? Because sometimes you're being overly theatrical and sometimes it does help bring the story to the front and move the story forward. Yeah. And sometimes it has meaning and other times it just colors and flashy
someone's read a book on how to make a movie and it's the good guy wears white and the bad guy wears black.
For me that was an unnecessary move. Even though I don't consider myself to be a minimalist in my life, when it comes to films, I kind of take a much more practical approach where it's if it doesn't need to be on camera, cut it. And it's for me, it would be much more impactful if you just blend it with the rest. But where I want to go back to, which I think we can wrap up with that one, is the actual final scene with the courtroom steps. What did you make from that scene?
Well, it's interesting though, because as I said, I think there's definitely probably something in the kind of power behind a name and also the anonymity of a jury room. And do these people feel like they could say all of these things because they don't have a name?
Yeah.
It's very easy to say all these things when no one knows who you are. And it's also then something that has been brought on in a lot of other films. The one that always jumps out to me is Layer Cake. Again, the final scene of Layer Cake is Daniel Craig turning to the camera and going, "You don't even know my name." Even though this whole film we've been hearing about these characters, you only get to the end, you go, "Oh crap, I didn't actually know your name." They could have even done something similar in that, but then, to me it feels like there is something clearly there to make a statement of the anonymity of a jury room and, not having a name and how much power is kind of in that. And the fact that, again, it is the White Knight who's riding away who we know who he is.
I think the effect of that scene on the courtroom steps when they exchange names is to diffuse the tension that's just been built up in the preceding scene where the guy has the meltdown.
Yeah, it's very grounding.
So it's kind of like the film lands there.
Yeah. I agree.
And they could have left it more cliffhangery and more shocking, but it was nice the way that everyone was brought back down to earth.
Well, as I say, I feel like and that's of the time as well. I feel like if you made that film today, that's probably more cliffhangery.
Right, yeah. And I do feel like the directional decision to remove the names from the equation when they are in the room is because at the end of the day, one of the themes that are addressed in the film is democracy. And the lack of names kind of implies that democracy is not about the individual right? It's about the decision that needs to be made by a group of people.
Collective.
The collective, right? And collective doesn't have a name, like the jurors. That's all you need. So the number aspect is like practical, just address each other.
Yeah.
So for them to step out there and kind of be like, hey, here's my name. It's, as you said, Simon, it's very grounding, and it kind of humanizes them, because we saw like the ugliest side of a lot of them in that room. And when they make I don't want to say the right decision, but they make a decision that's the one that's in the majority, they go outside and they're like, yeah, I actually have a name. And it kind of puts a face to the name, and it makes you feel like, for me anyway, it made me identify with everyone, because I do have biases. I do have like things that I don't want to admit, and like seeing myself in these, like some of these dialogues, it was very illuminating, just be able to step out there and be like, and my name is Sophie. You know, it's like AA, kind of like admitting the guilt and just putting myself out there and being human.
It gives you faith that everyone does have critical faculties, and that guy, Henry Fonda's character, extracted them one by one from those jurors. But the way I saw it was that, with regards to the jurors not being given names from the beginning, is that they were essentially like a pack of 11 people that all decided that... No, but I mean,
11,
there were 11 of them that said, this guy's guilty. And they were like this pack that hadn't really thought it through. And then over time, they then regained their identities one by one as Henry Fonda drew it out of them. And then they got their names back by the end.
I mean, it's a huge... I mean, even like in today's society, the idea of unconscious biases is such a huge thing. And the film puts unconscious biases in the most critical of scenarios. Where,
and also conscious bias as well.
Yeah.
Because they're flat out racist.
Yeah, the old man is a flat out racist,
Yeah, one of the guys is like, well, if we don't convict him now, he'll just do it. It's something else bad. So we might as well just electrocute him now.
Yeah.
That was one of the arguments.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to speak with someone who's much older about this film, because for us, we don't know the context of the time in which it was released so well. And I suspect that this film probably was quite progressive in its day.
Yeah.
Considering the topics that they're addressing. And the ending, how they all get through these prejudices, prejudice. Like the year before, there were still segregated buses in America between black and white. So think of that. Imagine that film being released covering those topics, and that was still happening.
Very, very
It's pretty mad.
progressive, yeah. Cool, so any final thoughts on the final scene?
I love the film. I completely had forgot. Like, it's one of those ones that...
So the ending works for you as well?
Yeah, the ending works for me. Yeah, I mean, as I say, it could have ended in other ways in which you don't get a verdict, or we just see them all walk off, or even more of a white knight riding off into the sunset type of thing. But actually, as you say, Simon, they just ground it, and that's it. They just go, that's it. They don't feel there's no need to drag it out like that. You know, you could have easily made that final scene on the steps like a 10-minute conversation between jurors 9 and 10 about, or 8 and 9 about, you know, the case, and especially the fact that, you know, even after that, the last person you see walking down the steps is 3. He's the final one to come out. The White Knight runs away, and the last thing you see is him going down the steps. I think he even turns back and looks at the court, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Anything else would have, you know, you definitely could have had it that they prolong that scene in some way, but actually it kind of sits quite nicely, as you say, as a grounding moment for everything, and a stepping out of that pressure cooker into, okay, back to reality of who we are as people and not just numbers.
Cool. I'm calling this a wrap. Thank you for joining me, Ben and Simon. I hope we don't get cancelled on day one. I feel like that's...
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
I'm looking forward to be doing this with you every other week.
Yeah.
Right? We're doing this, right? We're committed.
We're committed. We're doing it.
It's happening. So that's the show, people. That's the show. Thank you for listening to that final scene. Join us every other Wednesday for iconic and not so iconic final scenes in TV and film history, along with recommendations and the occasional philosophical rabbit hole, which I feel like we're gonna get to eventually. If you like what you just heard, please subscribe to wherever you're listening to your podcast. And if you're feeling extra giving today, please rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts. Bye.
Did you like it? Did you like that?
Did I like it? I loved it.
I had no idea you could milk a cat.
I have nipples, Greg. Could you milk me?
Good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.